Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Welcome. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The group responsible for the Death to Canada chants has now been designated a terrorist group by the Canadian government. Political journalist Brian Lilly will have the details. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says a number of Indian diplomats with ties to criminal activity have been kicked out of Canada. And the Alberta government says more physicians have moved to our province. We will have the details as to how many.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The Trudeau government says Samidoun will now be listed as a terrorist entity. You may recall that Samidoun was behind many of the pro-Palestinian and anti-Israel rallies across the country, including the protest in Vancouver, where the Death to Canada was heard over and over again. The designation means that Canadians are banned from donating or providing property to the group. The United States has added a Canadian citizen affiliated with Samidoun to its counter-terrorism list. Sun political columnist Brian Lilly says it's about time that Samidoun received their terrorist designation from the Trudeau Liberals.
Hopefully, it means that we're going to see less of them at these public rallies. You're right, they have been front and center in Toronto, they're front and center in Vancouver. That whole Death to Canada chant, long live October 7th, that's all Samidoun. They've been part of the encampments. So being part of that organization now comes with a criminal charge. They won't be able to fundraise. Their ability to disseminate information will be curtailed in this country, and those are all good things.
Mr. Lilly will have more on Samidoun and talk about a coup reportedly taking place within the Trudeau Liberal caucus. He'll have details coming up later in our program. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says his government expelled 6 Indian diplomats linked to criminal activity after New Delhi refused to cooperate in investigations. He says Canada is still asking India to cooperate with the RCMP probes into violent incidents and coercive behavior linked to agents of the Indian government.
As the RCMP Commissioner stated earlier, they have clear and compelling evidence that agents of the Government of India have engaged in and continue to engage in activities that pose a significant threat to public safety. This includes clandestine information gathering techniques, coercive behavior targeting South Asian Canadians, and involvement in over a dozen threatening and violent acts, including murder.
Federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says outside of expelling the Indian diplomats, the federal government must hold an emergency public safety committee meeting to discuss what else can be done to protect the lives of Canadians.
The RCMP basically painted a picture that a foreign government is engaging criminal elements in Canada to perpetrate violence against Canadians, including shooting at homes, shooting at Canadians' homes, killing Canadians, shooting at Canadian businesses, shooting at Canadian communities. We saw in the past year an uptake, a serious increase in gun violence. And the RCMP is pointing to the fact that a portion of that, a significant portion, can be attributed to a foreign government hiring criminal elements. This is a threat to anyone that lives in those communities. Anyone that has family in those communities, kids playing in the parks where those homes were shot at or those businesses were shot at. This is serious.
An Air India flight had to make an emergency landing in Nunavut following a security threat posted online. RCMP say the flight was en route from New Delhi to Chicago, but instead landed at the Iqaluit International Airport on Tuesday morning. All 211 passengers and crew members had to be relocated to the airport as the plane and passengers were rescreened. Indian media reported that another Air India flight from Mumbai to New York was rerouted to Delhi due to an online bomb threat. Alberta Premier Daniel Smith spoke out against Ottawa's proposal to require Canada's oil and gas sector to cut greenhouse gas emissions. The proposal is to slash them by 35 to 38% by the year 2030 from the 2019 levels. Smith says a production cap of that magnitude would severely hurt Alberta economically, restricting growth and hindering investment. She says it's time to scrap the cap.
Once again, Ottawa is attempting to set policies that are short-sighted and reckless. This fall, the federal government plans to table regulations that would set mandatory targets with irresponsible timeframes for upstream oil and gas and liquefied natural gas facilities. Ottawa says they're working to cut emissions, but we all know that's what they're really doing is cutting production of oil and gas. And this, by extension, will cut jobs and revenues across the country. And that should concern every Canadian. Alberta's oil and gas industry is a huge part of Canada's economy. It provides a stable energy supply for Canadians and also for people who live in countries and import our oil and gas products.
The Alberta government says our province has seen 518 more physicians move here, which represents an increase of about 4.5% compared to the same period last year. Officials say there are now 12,126 physicians registered in Alberta. Calgary's seen the largest increase of 370 physicians. Health Minister Adriana LaGrange says her government's priority is strengthening primary health care across the province, which is why they're setting up Primary Care Alberta. It'll be led by Dr. Kim Simmons, who will act as CEO.
Which means more Albertans will be attached to a primary care provider, which may be a family doctor or a nurse practitioner, but no one should be forced to seek primary health care in an emergency department or acute care setting. This work will include introducing new models of primary care, which means supporting the formation of teams of primary care professionals to work together and provide comprehensive health care to each Albertan. Primary Care Alberta will also work to increase access to after-hours care, including options for virtual and digital health where appropriate, because health issues don't just happen during business hours, and I think we all know that.
Alberta NDP leader Naheed Nenshi and NDP nominee for Lethbridge West Rob Miyashiro criticized Health Minister LaGrange's recent announcement on primary health care. Nenshi also took issue with the UCP's recent ad campaign against the federal government's emissions cap and offered support to Miyashiro for the upcoming Lethbridge West by-election. BCN's Landon Hickok chatted with both and has the story.
Alberta NDP leader Naheed Nenshi was in Lethbridge alongside Lethbridge's West NDP nominee Rob Miyashiro to address a number of issues, primarily in healthcare. Nenshi was critical of Health Minister Adriana LaGrange's morning announcement of Alberta's new primary care agency. He said the new announcement is like shuffling deck chairs on a sinking ship.
The announcement said nothing about getting more family doctors. It said nothing about paying family doctors reasonably. It said nothing about improving people's access to primary care. Instead, we have a new CEO and a whole set of new managers to develop a new system that still doesn't have any money and still doesn't have any people working in it.
Other reactions, such as the Alberta Medical Association, have a more moderate reaction to Tuesday's announcement. The primary care comprehensive model was tabled earlier this year, and the AMA have campaigned to get the provincial government to get it into action.
I mean, I think it's vital, and we've talked about this before, about the primary care is the foundation of a healthcare system, and we need to stabilize it and we need to build it. And, part of that for us, or a huge part of that, is getting this PCCM model put into place so that we can stabilize and retain the physicians we already have. Then with this organization, hopefully we can build upon that. We can become a model across the country where family physicians want to come and work. So that would be aspirational, and we'll see if we can get there.
The recent news of 2 Lethbridge physicians leaving the province brought alarm to the residents in the city, including one resident who now has to travel nearly an hour to Milk River for her family to get any health care.
I definitely can't blame our doctor for leaving. People need to work in supportive places, and I just can't see why a family physician would stay here and practice in Alberta when there's other provinces that they could practice in. I would say, though, that my family and many families are more vulnerable, and our children are more vulnerable because of this, and I would like to see something change.
And I have some news for the UCP because they don't seem to get it. It's impossible to find a family doctor in our community. But don't just ask me. Check the primary care networks, find a doctor tool. Well, you find a doctor in Lethbridge and there's nothing that comes up.
Tuesday morning, the UCP government launched a major ad campaign to voice against the federal government's emissions cap on oil and gas. Nenshi also criticized the campaign, citing it is heavily funded by taxpayer dollars.
This is typical Danielle Smith and UCP. They're spending a whole bunch of taxpayers' money in places like Halifax to try and influence the upcoming federal election. instead of actually solving the problem.
For Bridge City News, I'm Landon Hickok.
Full comments from Nenshi and Miyashiro are available to watch on our website or the Bridge City News YouTube channel. The court case involving an Alberta woman who is suing both the provincial and federal governments over injuries she says she sustained as a result of receiving the COVID-19 vaccines. Carrie Sakamoto from Lethbridge says she now has Bell's palsy as a result of receiving 2 shots of mRNA vaccines. Now, one of her lawyers is Jeff Rath from Rath & Company, who joins us now from Calgary to talk more about the case. Jeff, you say it's pretty important that Carrie and other Canadians who have been injured as a result of the vaccine be fairly compensated?
Absolutely. It's in Carrie's case, she has a recognized vaccine injury, and of course, her entire life has been destroyed by as a result of, and I don't even like calling them vaccines, these experimental injections. She can no longer function at any level that she could previously to getting the shot. They've lost their family farm. They've been forced to move into town. The quality of life that they now enjoy as a family is so far degraded as to be unrecognizable from what their lives were like prior to, Carrie being conned into taking these dangerous shots by Dina Hinshaw and the provincial government and federal government, that it's beyond belief.
So what message are you really trying to convey with this court case?
What we're trying to convey is that there needs to be accountability amongst the provincial and federal governments that literally lied to the citizens of Canada, repeatedly saying that these vaccines were quote unquote safe and effective, when they knew from the data they received from Pfizer and the other companies themselves that these shots were not safe and not effective. I mean, Pfizer's data indicated, with the childhood vaccines as an example, that if a kid were to get vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine, that they were more likely to die from myocarditis than they were to die from COVID following a Pfizer shot. So it's important for people to recognize that, they've been sold a bill of goods by, with regard to these vaccines, that they're, these shots. The long and the short of it is that the data, now demonstrates that the more shots you get, the poorer your health outcomes are.
Now, Jeff, didn't those who were injured by the vaccine already receive some form of compensation by the federal government?
The compensation program is a complete joke. It's more money is going to the Trudeau's pals that are running the program that are given to the victims. In Carrie's case, the paltry sums that she's been given through the vaccine injury program, no way compensate her family for the manner in which their lives have been destroyed by these experimental shots. So that's the problem, is that the compensation that's available in no way matches the amount of injury that's been caused. And look at people that have myocarditis. Like, we have one of our clients, has had 10 years scrubbed off of his life as a result of sustaining both myocarditis and vasculitis, from these shots. Like, how do you compensate, somebody for that? The vaccine injury program doesn't even come close to it.
Thanks so much for your time today, Jeff. That was Jeff Rath with Rath & Company. He's one of the lawyers representing Carrie Sakamoto, who is suing following injuries she says she sustained after receiving the mRNA vaccines. Well, it was another spectacular fall day here in Lethbridge. Lots of colors, which still remains on the trees. Jeanette Rocher is now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, the warm temperatures have been welcome, but it appears as though the mercury may be taking a little dip soon.
Well, yeah, dipping from today's 23 degrees to 19 degrees, which is still higher than seasonal, by the way. After that, we're going to see temperatures on Thursday and Friday more like around 12 and 13 degrees, which is right in that seasonal range. Still not too bad. We've been very fortunate this October. Okay, so overnight low this evening, 6 degrees, going to be mainly cloudy skies overnight. And then tomorrow, along with that 19 degrees, we could see winds up to 40 to even 60 kilometers per hour. But the good news is we're still going to see those 20-degree days coming back closer to the weekend. I'll be back later in the show to tell you all about that.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. Police in Winnipeg say a 4-year-old child is dead after falling out of a 19-story window. They say it took place at a high-rise apartment building in the Central Park neighborhood on Monday evening. The child was pronounced dead at the hospital. Police say they have determined the fall was accidental and no arrests were made. The incumbent Saskatchewan party says if re-elected, it would stop remitting the federal carbon tax on natural gas and electricity used to heat homes for another year. The province announced the move a year ago after the federal government said it would exempt home heating oil from its carbon levy, but didn't do the same for fuels used in other regions. Saskatchewan's exemption for natural gas is currently to last until the end of December, and the one for electricity is in place until April 30th of next year. Saskatchewan voters go to the polls on October the 28th. Southern Alberta has many historical attractions and very exciting events drawing tourists to our region, which helps to boost our local economy. Dominika Wujik, Senior Director of Communications with Tourism Lethbridge, explains how these special events can attract investors to not only visit but stay and build businesses for the prosperity of Lethbridge.
It starts with a visit, and how many people have said that they went and traveled somewhere and eventually moved there? That is a very normal thing to hear, and it's no different when it comes to businesses and investors. And in fact, that's why we host events like Brighter Together Food Journey, which are specifically set up to bring those investors here to our city and show them around. Because if we don't do things like that, then they're not going to even think about Lethbridge. And so that's what we're trying to do, is bring those types of people in.
Make sure you catch the full interview with Dominika Wujik from Tourism Lethbridge and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up later in our show. The Holy Spirit Catholic School Division grew by 4.35%, or 234 more students compared to last year. School officials say there are now more than 5,600 students enrolled in Lethbridge this school year. The division board chair says one of the reasons for that increase is that parents want to provide faith-based education for their children.
It's like we have grown this past year by one full elementary school. The growth in Holy Spirit School Division is really quite remarkable. And it has been going on 3 years in particular. The growth has been simply exponential. We're finding really significant increases of parents of many Christian backgrounds who are enrolling their schools or enrolling their children in our schools, so that combination of all of those factors is really resulting in a pretty significant increase in many of our schools, particularly the schools in the city of Lethbridge.
The Holy Spirit Catholic School Division is comprised of 16 schools and one outreach center within 6 communities, including Lethbridge, Coaldale, and Taber. You know, high summer temperatures and above all, a lack of rain were the main challenges facing farmers during the 2024 harvest season in Alberta. David Bishop, Region 1 Director for Alberta Grains, explains which types of crops produce the best during this harvest.
The cereals did. They can handle the stress of the heat we had in July better than the oil seeds, which is the canola, and the pulses, which were the yellow peas. We just had a hot July, and we had a really, really good crop coming, looking like it probably would be a bumper crop, and then the heat in July kind of put it back down to more normal, to a more average crop. It was a good crop. I'm not going to say it wasn't a good crop. It was a good crop, but was it a bumper crop? No. It was probably closer to an average crop.
According to Alberta government statistics, our province saw some of the most significant drought and persistent heat during the 1920s and 30s. Well, it was a good day to do some combining here in southwestern Alberta today. We had another beautiful day with lots of sunshine, but the temperature will be cooling just a little bit. A complete look at the weather forecast is coming up. Well, Jeanette Rocher is now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, we experienced a little more of that warm wind here in Lethbridge, and fortunately, some of those colorful leaves are still hanging on.
Yeah, we've been so fortunate this October with all the beautiful colors, and even the wind feels so warm, like you were saying there, Hal. But yeah, we're heading from 23 degrees. We're just going to dip a little bit in temperature tomorrow, down to 19 degrees. We could see winds up to 40 and even 60 kilometers per hour on Wednesday. 12 degrees on Thursday, 13 on Friday. That's more around where seasonal highs should be. And then back up to 20 on Saturday with clear skies, 16 on Sunday. And then we're going to see that dip right there as we get into next week. Monday, high of only 7 degrees, which surprisingly is still seasonal. So we're seeing right here 14 for the average high for this time of year, 0. The average low, 29. That was our high temperature, the record high happening on this day back in 1945. And on this day back in 76, we saw the record low, which was minus 11. A sun rose this morning at 7:54 a.m. Our sunset this evening at 6:39. So we're just under 11 hours. So 10 hours, 45 minutes of daylight. As we look to the west coast, tomorrow seeing a high of 15 degrees. Victoria could see those showers ending in the afternoon, 50K winds in the Juan de Fuca Straits there. 14 for a high in Vancouver. Showers ending in the morning. Could see a risk of a morning thunderstorm there as well. 10 degrees in Edmonton tomorrow. Could see some showers that are going to be clearing up by the afternoon, and then a mix of sun and cloud. In Calgary tomorrow with a high of 16 degrees. As we look to the rest of the prairies, we're seeing mainly partly cloudy skies across all three of these prairie cities here. Saskatoon sitting at 22 though, 24 for the high in Regina with clear skies, and 16 in Winnipeg. Winnipeg could also see 30K winds tomorrow. As we look to the central part of the country, Toronto could see partly cloudy skies, high 10 degrees. Ottawa could see some showers, looks like some freezing rain there as well. 9 for the high only, 11 degrees the expected high tomorrow in Montreal with clear skies. As we look to the Atlantic portion of the country, now we're seeing some rain. There it is. Okay, 9 degrees for a high expected tomorrow in Fredericton. Fredericton could see 60% chance of showers, up to 40K winds. Same thing in Halifax with that 60% chance of showers, rather, 20 to 40 kilometer per hour winds, high of 10 degrees there. Charlottetown seeing a little bit more rain, 2 to 4 millimeters falling tomorrow, 8 degrees for the high, and 13 for the high in St. John's tomorrow. Could see also a 60% chance of showers and up to 40K winds there. So there you go. That is your forecast.
The owner of a pulp mill in northwestern Alberta has been fined $1 million for letting almost 31 million litres of toxic wastewater flow into the Peace River. Federal government officials say the wastewater was lethal to fish. Mercer Peace River Pulp Limited pleaded guilty last month to a section of the Fisheries Act. The conviction means the company's name will be added to the Environmental Offenders Registry. Rent prices in Canada increased yet again, but at a slower pace in September. Stats Canada says they rose 8.2% compared with a year ago, following a year-over-year gain of 8.9% in August. The overall inflation rate fell last month to 1.6% after slowing to 2% in August. Now that's in line with the Bank of Canada's target to be able to cut interest rates yet again. Today's report is the last major piece of economic data before the central bank's interest rate decision takes place next week. The Canadian Real Estate Association says close to 469,000 properties will trade hands this year. It downgraded its housing market forecast for the rest of the year, citing interest rate cuts not having spurred the improvement it was looking for. The new forecast comes as CREA says the average price of a home sold in September amounted to roughly $670,000. That is up 2.1% from September of last year. The number of homes changed hands last month rose 6.9% on a year-over-year basis. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 32 points on the day to finish at 24,439. The NASDAQ was down 324 points to 42,740. The S&P 500 was down 44 on the day to 5815. And the NASDAQ was down 187 points to finish at 18,315. West Texas Intermediate oil was down $2.90 to $70.93 US per barrel. Natural gas was even at $2.49 US. Gold was up $12.92 to $26.6218 US an ounce, and silver was up 25 cents to $31.48 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $7.95 per bushel. Barley is at $6.03. Canola is at $13.65, and corn is at $7.32 per bushel. Live cattle were down $1.53 to $186.73. Feeder cattle were down $2.60 to $246.53. Lean hogs were even at $87.33, and the Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours at $72.60 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, the Trudeau government says Samidoun will now be listed as a terrorist entity. You may recall that Samidoun was behind many of the pro-Palestinian and anti-Israel rallies across the country, including the protest in Vancouver, where death to Canada was heard repeatedly. The designation means that Canadians are banned from donating or providing property to the group. Coming up, Sun political columnist Brian Lilley will have more on Samidoun's designation. He'll also discuss how there are some within the Liberal caucus who reportedly want to see Justin Trudeau replaced as party leader. My interview with Mr. Lilley is coming up shortly. When you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. Also, be sure to visit our website anytime to check out a number of stories and interviews. The Canadian government has officially labeled Samidoun as a terrorist entity. Samidoun, as you may remember, has been behind a lot of the pro-Palestinian and anti-Israel rallies across the country. Now, to chat about this in more detail is Sun political columnist Brian Lilley, who's joining us from the sunshine in Winslow, Arizona. Such a fine sight to see. Brian, before we talk about what you're doing south of the border, let's talk about this designation for Samidoun. Many Canadians say, you know what, it's about time.
And I'm one of them. I didn't know much about Samidoun prior to October 7th, 2023. But they're based in Vancouver, British Columbia. They've been banned by Germany, declared a terrorist entity there. Same thing with Israel. But suddenly we were allowing this group, which acts as a front for the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, a banned terrorist organization for more than 20 years. They're acting as a spokesperson for that group. They are advocating for the release of terrorists. They call them, they're just simply political prisoners, or no, you look up who they're advocating for, it's prisoners. So kudos to the Trudeau government for doing this. Could they have done it sooner? Absolutely, but you do have to make sure that these things are done properly so that they have certain effect. What does this mean? Well, hopefully it means that we're going to see less of them at these public rallies. You're right, they have been front and center in Toronto, they're front and center in Vancouver. That whole Death to Canada chant, long live October 7th, that's all Samidoun. They've been part of the encampments. So being part of that organization now comes with a criminal charge. They won't be able to fundraise. Their ability to disseminate information will be curtailed in this country, and those are all good things.
Brian, on Monday, the Trudeau government made some serious allegations about India that made international headlines. Can you explain what they were?
They accused 6 diplomats, 2 at the High Commission in Ottawa, 2 at the consulate in Toronto, which, interestingly enough, is in the same building as our Post Media headquarters, and then 2 in the Vancouver consulate. So 6 in total, accused them of being involved in coercion, intimidation, violence against Canadian citizens with an Indian background in this country, and link them to the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar more than a year ago. Very serious allegations. The RCMP had gone to India and said, we'd like you to remove the diplomatic immunity from these people because we want to charge them. And at that point, India withdrew. Well, we made those diplomats persona non grata. That's the official term for saying you're not welcome in this country. Before they could be kicked out, India withdrew them.
Brian, the foreign interference inquiry hearing continues. Now, there was a 54-day delay in issuing a warrant to surveil a top Liberal fundraiser, and no one in the government seemed really bothered by it. Now, does this not speak to your point about Trudeau dealing with foreign interference as more of a partisan political issue?
Well, yeah, because he's going very hard on India, and he should. Look, we can't have foreign governments intimidating Canadian citizens, trying to interfere in our elections, or any of those things. But he's gone very hard on India because he's got a voting bloc that he wants to secure and make sure that they're on side. And that is the Sikh community, in particular, that part of the Sikh community that believes in Khalistan, the Sikh separatist movement. So he's pushing hard on that. But when it comes to China, that warrant that had a 54-day delay, that was reportedly a warrant seeking to surveil Michael Chan, longtime Liberal political organizer. He'd been in cabinet at the Ontario level and an MPP. He also was a top fundraiser for Trudeau. And they got the warrant request in March of 2021. They didn't sign it until May. In the meantime, as we heard at the inquiry, Bill Blair, then the public safety minister, was signing other warrants within 4 to 8 days. But this one had a 54-day delay. The Liberals continue to insist there was nothing political about it, but some interesting cross-examination just this morning showing that I think we all have reason to be skeptical about that claim. We should be taking foreign interference seriously, no matter who's behind it. But with the Trudeau Liberals, everything is about electoral politics and their political fortunes.
You know, Brian, many Canadians are receiving their carbon tax rebate checks, but there's still a bit of a fight over whether most of us are better off due to the carbon tax. So, I talked to the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, our buddy Franco Terrazzano. He said no. What did the parliamentary budget officer, Yves Giroux, have to say?
He said that 8 out of 10 Canadians get back more than they pay in just the carbon tax. But when you look at the full measure of the carbon tax and what it does to the economy, 6 out of 10 families are paying more. So how can he say that? Well, he takes the government numbers at face value, which I wouldn't do. Because the Trudeau government figures out your rebate based on averages. And so, they say the average Canadian only drives 15,000 kilometers a year. I'm betting, Hal, that you drive a lot more than that. I drive less. So an urbanite like me that parks the car in the basement garage and takes it out every 2 weeks, they're going to get back more, but you're going to be paying more. If you have a larger home, you're going to be paying more in heating, all of those things. But the parliamentary budget officer says, fine, I'll take you at face value with your numbers. And when he does that and he just looks at the carbon tax, he says, yes, okay, the government numbers add up. But we all know we're paying the GST on the carbon tax. We're having lower economic output due to the carbon tax. And those are in the government numbers as well. And so when you take all of that into effect, the GST, meaning the tax on the tax, lower economic activity, lower incomes for many Canadians due to the carbon tax, lost opportunity, he says 6 out of 10 are paying more. This is having a detrimental effect on the incomes and the financial well-being of Canadians, and it's only going to get worse as the carbon tax increases every April 1st between now and 2030.
The Trudeau government's so-called gun buyback program, Brian, is stalled once again. Now, the latest cost is $67 million, and not a single gun has been seized. So what's going on here?
Yeah, this so-called gun buyback. Well, they didn't own them in the first place, so they can't buy them back. I guess you call it a compensation for gun seizure program. It really has stalled. They don't have a plan. It has been put off until late October 2025. They've extended the amnesty that everyone has. These guns were made illegal May 1st, 2020, and you get an amnesty until after the next election. Don't tell me it's not political. Polysuviant, the Polytechnique Remembers organization that has been advocating for greater gun control constantly since the École Polytechnique massacre, they want more guns added to the list. And of course, that didn't go well for the Trudeau government last time. But that's what they're pushing on right now. Simple fact of the matter is how they can add more guns if they want, and it wouldn't change a thing because they don't know how to get them out of your basement and mine. They don't know how to get them out of the gun safes because they've asked the RCMP, can you do this? And they say, we don't have the resources. Can we turn to provincial police in Ontario and Quebec or municipal forces? British Columbia, the Conservative leader there, who very much could be the next premier, he said he will not allocate resources to gun seizures when there aren't enough resources for everyday policing. They've asked the Canadian military to be involved. They said, we can't do it. They asked Canada Post. They said, are you crazy? So they don't know how to get the guns back, but they keep spending money on consultants and companies to try and build something. What exactly? Even they don't know.
Brian, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was asked once again if he'll be stepping down, if he's sticking around. He's been dealing with reports of a coup within his own caucus, and polls say the Conservatives could sweep most of Ontario, including Toronto.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, my riding, Toronto Centre, in the model that says the Liberals would almost be wiped out in Toronto, my riding would stay Liberal, so I'd still have Marcy Ian as my MP. But every other riding, some modeling, and I was cautioned with models, could go Conservative or a few NDP. The latest Abacus data poll has the Conservatives well ahead in Toronto proper, not just the 905 region, not just the suburbs, in Toronto proper. They have them winning. And so keeping seats like Toronto St. Paul's that they stole in the by-election recently. So yeah, Trudeau should be facing calls for him to go. But this coup attempt that we heard about starting last week, apparently 30 to 40 names. Well, nobody's come forward. I've talked to Liberal MPs about this, and they're quietly telling me, yeah, take it seriously. Okay, have you signed? No, I haven't signed. Have you seen this alleged letter? No, I haven't. But, people are really upset. Well, we're in a break week now. This news comes, I believe it broke last Friday. Then we're into the Thanksgiving holiday and then the break week. Nobody's come forward to put their name out. It looks like the gang that couldn't shoot straight, if you want to be honest. So it's, I'm not going to put any stock in it until somebody steps forward and says, I'm behind this letter, and here's the 36 people behind me who support it.
Okay, Brian, you're right now in Winslow, Arizona. I'm reminded of that classic Eagles song, Peaceful, Easy Feeling. Did you stand at a corner, Winslow, Arizona? Did you see a lady in a flatbed Ford driving by and taking a look at you? What happened?
I'm about 2 blocks from a place called Standing in a Corner Park, and they've got a statue of Jackson Browne, who co-wrote the song, and they've got a statue of Glenn Fry at that street corner, and a parked red flatbed Ford truck. There's murals, there's everything else. They really play it up. I'm down here on a Route 66 travel junket, checking out Route 66, and of course, it runs right through Winslow. So it's been fascinating to watch all the American politics at the same time.
Yeah, you've been gauging the political climate there. Donald Trump was in the state campaigning on Sunday, Brian. Kamala Harris was there when you arrived. How's it looking for both the Republicans and the Democrats?
So it's going to be interesting. My take on it right now is I think Donald Trump wins presidential in Arizona. He would take their 11 electoral college votes. But I think there's a Senate race on right now, and it looks like that's going to go to the Democrats. And then there is a constitutional amendment that it seems to be angering activists on both sides, but it looks like it's going to pass. It's on abortion, and it would guarantee access to abortion, but with limits. And so people that don't want any abortion are upset. People that want no limits are upset. But, so it's a very mixed thing. And when you hear, well, they'll vote for Trump and for a Democrat in the Senate and on this abortion thing, it sounds all mixed up. But, this is becoming a purple state. It was a traditionally red state. It's becoming purple. And, on the presidential side, to give you one example, housing prices in Phoenix are up by 47% in the last 4 years. That's one reason I think Trump is going to be winning, because the Biden administration hasn't handled the economy well, and everyone's talking about how bad the economy is. And so Phoenix and Scottsdale area, that's the reason that Biden won by just 10,000 votes last time. And it's probably the reason Trump will win this time.
What's interesting is I see a lot of tweets, or I guess posts on X, of people slamming Trump, saying he's a racist, people on the Democratic side of things. But then a few tweets later, I see a lot of black families supporting Donald Trump. So, it depends upon the side of the fence you're on. Now, Brian, a story you reported on is that Trump appears to be receiving a lot of support among Hispanic and Latino voters, even though he campaigns to crack down on illegal immigration?
Yeah, he came to the state on Sunday and he was hitting hard on illegal immigration, and he's getting support among Hispanic and Latino voters who say the same thing. Yeah, we're worried because there are Venezuelan gangs that are coming across that are using the mass migration north as a way to get their people into the country. These are not crazy statements that Trump is making, and people can see it on the ground, and then they see that their media doesn't report on it. So depending on the poll, Trump is getting between 40 or 47% in that range among Hispanic and Latino voters. Some polls have him ahead of Harris among those voters, and especially among people over the age of 35. So it's going to be fascinating to see. That's just within Arizona. Of course, you'd have to check out elsewhere. But, this is an area with a very high Latino population, and a good portion of them are backing Donald Trump, even with his stand on immigration, or perhaps in part because of it.
Just from your experience, what you've seen down there so far, Brian, how much stronger are the Democrats now that Kamala Harris has taken the reins from Joe Biden?
Well, you just have to look at the polling and where things are going. Before Biden stepped down, Virginia, which was solidly Democrat, was becoming a swing state. She's brought that back into their fold. I just saw a YouTube ad before coming on with you of her making a plea saying we're tied. So she's been able to bring some states back. In other areas, she's losing ground, but she's made the race competitive. And if you recall, just before Biden was being shoved out the door, he was losing bigly, as Trump might say. And so that has really changed, with her stepping in.
I thought with Trump it's more huge. But bigly works too. Political columnist Brian Lilly, thanks for joining us and standing down at Winslow, Arizona.
Thank you.
Well, many of us love to travel. Not only is it enjoyable, but it does help the economy as well. Alberta has had a stellar year for tourism. In fact, it's been a record-breaking year for travel. But how is Lethbridge and Southern Alberta doing in this department? Well, joining us today to chat about this more is Dominika Wujik. She is the Senior Director of Communications with Tourism Lethbridge. Dominika, great to have you with us today. I love this topic, tour too, because I love to travel. So what is going on here in Southern Alberta? I hear the province as a whole has done very, very well.
Yeah, we're really excited that tourism is finally getting back to a really good spot. And we also collect data, of course, and we do what's called the Power of Tourism. And that document will be released in the coming weeks. So we will also have our numbers to share, which I can tell you we are looking good, and it's looking better than it has since 2019, which is fantastic to hear.
Right, of course, that goes back to COVID when everything kind of shut down. And so since then, we've seen that slow sort of get back to normal, right? And it just seems like the past year has just exploded. I know I myself, almost anytime I take a flight out of Calgary into the United States, there are tons of people from the States, Americans that have gone to, like, usually it's Lake Louise and Banff, but, you know, we want them to also stay down here where Waterton is as well, don't we?
Absolutely. We have so much to offer here in Southern Alberta. We have great local food. We are some of the best agricultural hubs in all of Canada. And so we have a lot of great things that we can offer many visitors coming, and we're excited that they're finally realizing that. We've seen many people who have chosen Waterton over Banff because Banff is getting busier, and so they want to come experience something a little bit more serene, a little bit quieter, and so that's been fantastic. As a UNESCO hub, we like to refer to ourselves as, we have 4 UNESCO hubs all around us that can showcase Waterton, Head Smash and Buffalo Jump, Writing on Stone, and of course the Dinosaur Park. And those are all day trips that people can do and stay in Lethbridge and still get to experience all the things Lethbridge has to offer as well.
Yeah, wonderful. Can you maybe explain how much of an impact tourism has had on our local economy here?
Of course, you know, tourism is a major economic driver in Lethbridge, as it is anywhere, but it does generate revenue for visitor spending in accommodations, restaurants, retail, of course, local attractions. And so those contributions are huge in our industry. They create new jobs, they create opportunity for new infrastructure, and everything kind of in between. The events and attractions that we have in our city are helping to draw these visitors in, which we know they're spending their money, and we want them to, because that just continues to put money back into our economy and supports all of our local businesses. As we know, they all need support, and it helps to increase some of those tax revenues to create benefits for our community. So because of that, we're excited that the economic impact is so big.
No kidding. Now, you mentioned opening up jobs and, you know, how it's so positive for businesses here in the community. But is there also a connection between tourism and out of that businesses learning about our community and maybe setting up a location here if they're coming from outside of this area?
So we know that tourism sort of serves as that first introduction point for many potential investors, business owners, sort of anything. It starts with a visit. And how many people have said that they went and traveled somewhere and eventually moved there? That is a very normal thing to hear. And it's no different when it comes to businesses and investors. And in fact, that's why we host events like Brighter Together Food Journey, which are specifically set up to bring those investors here to our city and show them around. Because if we don't do things like that, then they're not going to even think about Lethbridge. And so that's what we're trying to do, is bring those types of people in. We work with partners like Economic Development Lethbridge to do work like that, because we know how important it is to get people to visit first and then hopefully invest and stay here for the long term.
Yeah, no, good point. Now, of course, like when we think of cities like Calgary, Vancouver, Toronto, they all have a reputation, things that they're known for, which then attracts people, attracts tourism. And I think reputations are derived partially from personal experiences, but also from cities doing good marketing campaigns, correct?
I mean, I think it's a big mix of both. There's a lot that goes into getting people to visit the city, and we like to focus our marketing campaigns on promoting our unique strengths. From a Lethbridge standpoint, a large amount of people that are coming are visiting friends and family. So those are the family members, the friends of the people who are already here. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that our reputation within the city and outside of the city is a good one, so that those people are the word of mouth, I guess, is also a good one.
Oh, certainly, yes. You mentioned this off the top there, but can you tell us a bit about how you're promoting food tours in Lethbridge?
So we're really lucky that we are part of Canada's premier food corridor. We have some of the best growing conditions in all of Canada. And because of that, we make some of the best food. We have heard from several of our local restaurants that they feel so lucky to be here in a city where they can get local produce within 10, 15 minutes. And not every city gets to have that. So that farm to table, it's really true here. We again, I mentioned the Brighter Together Food Journey. That's all about food and showcasing how food does in Lethbridge. And so we get people to go out to these farms where they meet the producers and they get to experience what that looks like. But then we bring them back into the city to see what that means once they're here, whether that's the farmers markets or the local restaurants creating the specific dishes. And most recently, we created a recipe book, which you can download on our website. And the recipe book is full of recipes made by some of our amazing local producers, our local restaurants, and it's all about using that local food that we are so lucky to have in our city.
Yeah, what kind of feedback are you getting from tourists who are doing this?
They're ecstatic about it. We've had we're close to 1,000 downloads on our recipe book right now. And when it comes to the food tours specifically, they just get excited that they get to do this, because again, when you talk about the Calgarys and the Torontos, they don't have these kinds of experiences because they're so much further out to get to. Whereas for us, it's in our backyard. So for them to do a day trip to go see several of our local producers, they're going to get so much out of it and not have to, drive for 6-7 hours in the day.
Oh, so true. Do we get any visitors specifically coming to see our famous train trestle bridge?
There's definitely a market for that. There's always visitors that are coming for specific things. We get a lot of photographers that come and want to see the bridge because it is such a beautiful historical landmark. And we definitely see that. We do have our visitor center that we operate. So usually when somebody comes in, we are always asking, what are you doing and where are you going to go? And even if they hadn't thought about the bridge, by the time they have chatted with us, they want to go see the bridge. We have several photos of the bridge, of course. We have postcards, we have stickers. And once they've seen that, they're really excited to go take a drive by or walk by it and check it out.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful work of architecture, isn't it? It's just an engineering phenomenon, if you would. And Lethbridge is also certainly known for the Nika Yuko Japanese Garden, and then most recently the Winter Lights Festival, which takes you to Nika Yuko.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and I would say that the garden remains one of the most iconic attractions in our city. It blends history with beauty, and every single time we have taken groups there or we have done a fam tour there, everybody feels this overwhelming sense of serenity and relaxation. And that's not something you can get inside of a city very often. So the gardens, especially the Winter Lights Festival, has really grown to draw so many different people into the city. I think that in last year with their numbers, they were at over 30,000 people just for the Winter Lights Festival, which is fantastic. And we love hearing that.
Yeah. And now, of course, Lethbridge is also known for Fort Whoop Up, and some people love to visit Old West and Indigenous historical sites. And I'm told that Germans, in particular, take an interest in this. So do you see a lot of German tourists traveling, coming specifically for these kinds of attractions?
Yeah, it's interesting. When we go into market where we do sell Lethbridge as a destination, we do hear a lot that the European German people are very interested in Indigenous experiences specifically. And so, we're very lucky because we have so many around us that we can generally attract those German travelers very easily. So it's exciting that they're interested in those types of experiences because Southern Alberta just has so much of that to bring to the table.
Right. They must love a head smashed in buffalo jump and riding on stone, which you mentioned earlier as well. Beautiful, beautiful spots. Yes. Where do most of our tourists come from besides Germany?
Again, I think our primary markets, with COVID, we're still kind of in that phase where I think most of the people are coming are probably from Alberta. They're people that are a little bit closer, so it's a little bit easier for them to come over and spend a couple days here and kind of continue on. We've heard that our travelers are doing a lot more of that, where they're picking places that are a little bit closer to home, that they can, be back in a couple of days. So definitely, Alberta market, some BC. We get a lot of people from Montana, obviously. So that's most of where everybody comes from. On top of that, we do also, like I said, have the international market. So we are seeing a lot of, like you said, the German population, as well as a lot of people from Asia as well.
Yeah. And then is the new agri-food hub and trade center drawing in some tourism dollars with the various events taking place there as well? I would imagine that it is.
So we work very closely with the Agri-Food Hub and Trade Center to actively bring in provincial and national conferences and meetings that actually bring in a huge amount of economic impact. So these types of travelers are known to spend more dollars. So they're the ones we like to go after. And so we do a lot of work to try and ensure that we actively seek those out. And in fact, in the last few months, we've secured 2 conferences that will be bringing, hundreds of thousands of dollars of economic impact into our city.
Wow. Maybe talk to us a little bit about the importance of having an event center like the Visit Leth.com arena, formerly the NMAX Center. I'm still getting used to that name, Dominica. Okay, so I'm guessing that people do travel to Lethbridge in order to attend certain events like music concerts, and then of course we got the Lethbridge Hurricane, so like sporting events like hockey games or rodeo, right?
We are really lucky to have a center like that in our city because it does attract, especially our neighboring communities who don't have centers like that, and of course outside. And I think that it's fantastic that they are creating these events, specifically ones, like we recently had the Thunder in the Bridge Festival, which is a brand new festival. It was 2 days long. Anything that occurs over a few days is really great for us in the tourism world because we know it guarantees people are going to be staying overnight. They're going to do maybe some shopping. They're going to go out to eat and possibly see other attractions. And so we love seeing that. And we love having the pride of a center like that in our city.
Yeah, for sure. Lethbridge doesn't have a zoo, unfortunately, but what about Coaldale's Alberta Birds of Prey Nature Center? I understand that it's the largest of its kind in all of Canada.
It is a fantastic place, and I think anyone who has not gone out there needs to go and take a look. They have grown so much, and they're probably one of the most engaging attractions we have in our area. And not only that, but the work that they do, because they're also saving a lot of these birds as well. And so I think it's just a fantastic connection again to our region and showcasing the birds that we have here, right? A zoo is great, but we know we don't have tigers around, whereas we know we're learning about the birds that are actually in our region. And what I love about it, I went with my kids, and now every time my kids see a hawk, they know exactly what the hawk is, and it's really fantastic to learn.
I know. I love it there. I actually have learned so much, you know, you don't even realize. It's true. Like when you see a hawk flying, you know that he's probably spotted a mouse or something, because most of these birds don't even fly unless they're going after prey. I never knew that before. It's an educational experience. Yeah, it really is. Okay, so Dominica, any final things you'd like to say to our viewers as to why it's a great idea to visit Lethbridge?
I think, just remembering that Lethbridge is just a very unique blend of cultural and outdoor. We have over 200 kilometers of walking and running trails, which most people don't know about. And then on top of that, we have our food. And so we are just really lucky that we have so many different pieces. And of course, we are the hub to so many different places as well. So, we encourage everyone to come take a gander through Lethbridge and check us out and see all, let us surprise you and let us show you what we have here.
Well, thanks so much for being with us today, Dominica. Great to have you on.
Thank you. It was lovely.
Dominica Wujcik is the Senior Director of Communications with Tourism Lethbridge. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.